You're watching Joy News Prime, and we're returning to our earlier story, which has to do with the case of vulnerabilities or the vulnerable people in the Greater Accra region. The Ghana National Household Registry on Tuesday began an emergency data collection exercise on the poor and vulnerable in the region. The outfit under the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection is mandated to compile appropriate data on the poor and needy for social protection programs. The National Coordinator, GNHR, Dr. Prosper Larry, has joined us via Zoom, and hopefully our connection is going to be a lot better now. Thank you very much once again. What has necessitated this data collection exercise in Accra, and why the name Emergency Data Collection Exercise?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Ghana National Household Registry, as you rightly said, we compile data for the poor and vulnerable. We should have done this in the northern region, having completed Upper East and Upper West. During the lockdown, we realized that a lot more people's socioeconomic status had moved, if not dipped, but their changes to their way of living had changed drastically. And so there was a need for us to update the GNHR database on the poor and vulnerable in Greater Accra, so that we can increase transparency and accountability in the provision of relief services for the poor and vulnerable during this time. And also to be able to, beyond government, provide data to other public and private sector partners who are looking to support the poor and the vulnerable persons. You know, data from northern region, Savannah, and then northeast would have been that which would have had as of this April, because Upper East, Upper West, we have a very complete database. In terms of the poverty profile, we started with the three most poorest, which is Upper East, Upper West, and Northern region. Greater Accra would have been one that we would have done at the latter parts of the year, but looking at the lockdown conditions and looking at issues of this COVID, we have come to do this database at such a time as this to be able to capture all the vulnerable groups.
All right, Dr. Larry, you talk about having to update the figures for Greater Accra region. It means that, or presupposes that you had data prior to that. What sort of data did you have on the vulnerable in Greater Accra region?
You know, we have had data because, you know, we have our social welfare, but the mandate of GNHR is not to really classify these groups, but to provide data, and such information is the one that is used for targeting. And so one of the things we seem to do is to pick a live data now. A lot of changes have taken place because of this disease. And, you know, most of the people are not people in households that you can easily trace. Some have migrated, some have moved. So we're sort of picking a live data at this point in time.
It sounds to me more like you really don't have the data, or you didn't have the data, and like you're now putting it together.
Yes, GNHR doesn't have data for Greater Accra. GNHR has completed data for Upper East, Upper West, and as I said, we were to go to Northern region. One of the approach we use that has made GNHR more efficient and as a center of targeting is that we do a census approach. So for Upper East and Upper West that is completed, each household was visited. And so once the data is complete, using the Proxy means test, we are able to classify according to poor, non-poor, and extremely poor. So for Greater Accra, in terms of poverty profile, Greater Accra was not our first priority because of the cost of carrying out a census in the whole Greater Accra. But because of this COVID pandemic, that
Dr. Larry, I'd like you to hold on for me a bit, because I also have joining us via Zoom the country director of St. Ghana, George Bimpe. Thank you very much, Mr. Bimpe. Are you surprised that the Ghana National Household Registry has no concrete figure on vulnerabilities in Accra?
No, Israel, I am not surprised. We have been following the work that they have been doing, and I must say that it's a very good initiative, but unfortunately, we did not follow through the work plan. I mean, when I say we, as a country, we did not follow through the work plan to commit resources to the Office of Prosper for them to have covered the whole country. So maybe we need to learn the lessons that if you want to, as a country, if we want to develop a very strong social protection system, you would need the data, and that you must invest in procuring that data. And I completely sympathize with my brother, because if they have had all the resources, I'm sure by this time they would have covered the whole country. I know how the program got stalled in terms of financial difficulties. I'm aware that the World Bank, for example, is going to support them to do, or is supporting them to do the Accra one. I am hoping that we learn a lesson from this, so that when the technocrats are working, we do not starve them with the resources and expect them to deliver. If we give them all the resources that they need, certainly they can deliver. And this is one clear case where, as a country, we failed to provide all the needed resources for them to do this. So that, I mean, all the agitation about people missing out, not getting the right people in terms of targeting would have been avoided. Israel, if you recall, the successes that the country is achieving with programs like LEAP is basically because of the application of the National Household Survey that Prosper talked about. And so as a country, we need to make sure that we invest in some of these essential information that helps us in planning and mitigating emergencies like this.
Mr. Bimpe, do hold on for me. I'm coming to you, Dr. Larry. How long is it going to take for you to put together this data on Greater Accra?
You know, for now, because of the funding arrangement, like Mr. George Osei did mention, we concentrating right now on the vulnerable categories, and we have estimated about 101,000 persons. And within 2 weeks, we want to gather this information. As I said, if there was complete funding, we should be looking at census in which we can cover the entirety of Greater Accra. Because for Northern, Savannah, and Northeast, we are going to do a complete census for that place, just as has happened in Upper East and Upper West. So for this exercise, we are just zooming into some hotspot areas. We've zoned into about 8 categories to sweep the data across those places so that it will be ready for social protection programs to use.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Larry. But I'll come to you, Mr. Bimpe, for your final word. I want to know, what would you expect should happen, or what would you say should happen when this data is collected, especially in this COVID-19 era where the vulnerable are really vulnerable?
At least if there is one thing that we should commend the ministry is how they have utilized the existing data from Upper East and Upper West. And so we should expect that the expert will be allowed to use that information in determining who has to get what social support from the state. Having said that, Israel, I think that we need to make the call that once the technocrats are collecting this data, there are some people who critically need some form of assistance. And I think that we will need to find ways to rely on the social structures in those places to identify the critical, segment of the population who need immediate support, so that once the data collection exercise is going on, the country can find means to supporting these people, so that at least the hardship that some of them may be going through will be mitigated to some reasonable extent.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. George Bimpe. He's a country director of St. Ghana.